Hi everyone, today I'm covering the winding, agile, back and forth turns that you see pros like FaZe Sway perform during 1v1s and free builds. I'm going to go over every protected high ground retake that I could find and explain how they work and when you should use them. I define protected high ground retakes as meaning direction changes which both start and end with scissor ramps. Furthermore, I only include retakes that involve some form of vertical cover for nearly the entire retake. This means that direction changes that don't cover your head, almost 100% of the time, are admitted. If you aren't familiar with scissor ramps or want to learn more about them in depth, check out my video about scissor ramps first, since this video was initially supposed to be scissor ramps part 2, but ended up being a bit more involved than I anticipated. Anyways, let's get started with the base case and build up from there. The simplest way you can turn and keep a scissor ramp is pretty bare bones and only requires the ramp build. This technique is awkward, slow, can only be done 180 degrees, and also doesn't let you go above the upper ramp despite that being possible, making it inefficient as well. That being said, it's not terrible, but definitely not worth doing. We can expand on this, however, and add a floor to the mix. This frees us up to turn in any direction since the floor keeps a connection, and also gives us some options for how we want to execute this. Editing, phasing, and placing the floor late are all possibilities here depending on preference. From former to latter, each provides different amounts of vertical cover, with editing being the most proactive. The floor is a nice improvement since we gain the 90-degree turn and the cover, but it's still a little bit slow, easy to track, and uncomfortable to chain together. Instead of a floor, we can choose to cap off scissor ramps with a cone instead. A cone is more malleable than a floor because of its edit options, and also allows for more vertical reaching edits. This added dimension gives more options starting with this simple but safe turn. By placing a floor beneath the cone, we can seamlessly transition our scissor ramp while staying fully covered the entire time. This technique is a bit slow because you lose a little bit of height on turning, but is a great option for players who cannot reliably perform more advanced techniques yet. You can do this with a floor, but there's little reason to prefer that since the cone offers more options and can be placed sooner. This technique also only works to the sides. There are ways to turn around, however. Something that used to be very popular but has aged now is placing two cones and then flipping your ramp to turn. This is kind of the 180 version of the previous retake and has similar advantages of being fully covered and simpler to perform. In fact, it even has similar disadvantages since it's also a bit slow. I also recommend this turn for players who need a safe protected retake while they're still learning more advanced options. An improved version of this takes advantage of the cone by using re-edits. Placing a wall here allows us to continue our scissor ramp, and because we use the cone to lift up, we stay covered while rising. Furthermore, because we get above our upper ramp, this technique is vertically efficient. For straightforward, effective, safe turnarounds, I think this option is great for players who are comfortable with re-edits. Let's move back the cone slightly though, since we can actually place it earlier, above the upper ramp. This allows us to optimize two of the previous retakes a bit. The cone turn can now be done sooner on your ramp, making it faster since you won't lose height while turning now, and the ramp flip turnaround can also be done sooner with the same benefits of not losing height anymore. This time, the cone is not connected by default after we edit through it, and so we have three options to keep things attached. We can place the floor quickly and double edit through to keep your scissor ramp. You can do a late connect after editing through the cone. There are a variety of ways of doing this, all of which I cover in my scissor ramp video, or you can place a wall first before turning around. It turns out that this looks structurally similar to the cone flip turnaround from earlier, but has the added benefit of more vertical cover throughout. Specifically, when you pop out above, this version has a cone to cover your head with. In exchange, if you wanted to place a preemptive upper cone before turning, it's a little bit slower. Overall, however, I think that the added vertical protection is slightly better. Before we move on, there are two quick things to note about cone-based retakes. You can connect to them from above instead of below using a floor or a cone, and you can sneak in an upper ramp early. Connecting from above allows you to stay looking upwards, which you are often already doing while performing retakes, but in exchange requires you to edit through builds or cone jump to continue onwards, and the early upper ramp is useful protection. Besides immediate benefits, however, there are also structural implications of both, which I'll be touching on at the end of this video. Okay, so we've gone over the floor and we've gone over the cone. What if, and it's a pretty big if, we could combine the floor and the cone together? That'd be pretty cool. And now we have another level of retakes, double edit retakes. First, let's quickly pay homage to our original floor retakes, which can be recreated by simply ramp editing the cone and making sure that your floor keeps things connected. While these can look identical to floor-based turns after being performed, they are strictly better because of the protection that the cone provides you. There are two different ways to ensure that you can place your lower ramp upon turning. You can either corner edit or half edit the floor like this so that part of it is still touching the sides, or you can half edit the floor and then reset it while jumping. I see pros do the reset version more often, and I think the small advantage that it offers is that you can jump a bit sooner. You can also apply the upper floor connect trick here as well, instead of resetting the floor, which has the same benefits that I mentioned earlier. It is worth mentioning that these can be done from a single ramp and don't necessarily need to start while scissor ramping. So we've used ramps, cones, and floors at this point. What's left? Well, wall. The use of walls to connect ramps in interesting ways during retakes was first popularized during the advent of the reverse jump. Martaz, like with many early building techniques, helped put this on the map after showing it off in a video, and the technique went on to become further developed. The base reverse jump does not qualify as a protected retake, however, since it has no cover during the jump and also does not transition into a scissor ramp. There are many ways to alleviate this, however. First, we can start mixing in our own upper cone. Alongside an upper ramp, this turns into a 90-degree turn that is side protected where your opponent is likely to be facing you. We can also use this ramp to perform a 180-degree turn around by placing our lower ramp in that direction and topping off the upper ramp with the cone to maintain the scissor ramp. Outside of using an upper ramp, placing additional cones is where you begin to get a little bit more mileage in terms of options. You can perform all of the upper ramp variations with a cone by throwing in a ramp edit, and the cone versions are all slightly better covered from above. Furthermore, we gain access to turnarounds that keep a scissor ramp via cone-based starts, floor edits, late connects, whatever option you're most comfortable with. We also gain access to a 0-degree turn with cones, which is an interesting mix-up to throw in, albeit super expensive and probably only viable in creative. Finally, before moving on, I also wanted to point out this retake from Connor, which I think best falls into the reverse jump category, although is a bit different than most reverse jumps. This retake is really cool because of how many things you can do out of only one structure. Connor already has a great video going over it, however, so I'll let you refer to that if you're interested. Alright, we've used every building piece at this point, but we haven't edited all of them. Besides editing cones, the last section of protected retakes I wanted to go over was ramp edits. I would consider ramp edit retakes to be one of the more recent meta-pushing techniques out there, despite how simple they may seem in a vacuum. You may have seen them before without realizing exactly what they are. Here's a clip of Beats, for example, performing a ramp edit retake that I'll be showing in a second. Because ramp turns and flips can happen so fast, XM players often sneak them in seamlessly. The simplest ramp edit retakes consist of flipping your ramp while you're still beneath it to keep vertical cover. This can be done by placing a floor below you after jumping, phasing through a floor, or editing through a floor. These aren't as height efficient as they could be, since it's possible to get above the upper ramp, but they're a nice clean start for this category. To get above the upper ramp while still maintaining vertical cover comes with two challenges. First, the ramp must stay connected when being turned, and second, we must retain our cover during the retakes. For the first challenge, you can place a wall before editing the ramp. You can place a late floor to connect, or you can edit through the floor like Beats does in the clip I just showed. The second challenge is initially solved by the fact that you can cone your upper ramp, allowing you to jump into a pre-covered area while flipping the ramp. From that point, you just need to start a scissor ramp again to keep the cover, which we've already gone over a few times at this point. Ramp edits are a really good way to mix up because re-edits can be very confusing for opponents, but be mindful of the fact that they are quite unprotected compared to most other retakes. Okay, so we've gone over all of the different techniques you can use to perform protected retakes. The last thing I wanted to address was how all these compose with each other, because often when people talk about high ground retakes, they show a lot of different techniques strung together instead of individual pieces. For the most part, all of these techniques can be combined in some way, although some of them are more effective than others. Remember when I was talking about that early upper ramp and how there were implications that came with it? Well, I meant that in regards to stringing together additional retakes. The early upper ramp, for example, makes it easier to perform upper cone combos out of upper floor catches. Fei Sui's famous retake is a good demonstration of this. Without the early upper ramp, it's difficult to continue to perform the same move back and forth because the window to place the upper ramp later is quite tight compared to early. I'm not going to go over every single combination of high ground retakes in this video because it's easier to figure out from just trying things yourself, but keep in mind how your retakes start and end and how that affects how well they can be performed together. If you enjoyed this video, thanks for watching. Feel free to like, subscribe, comment if you have any feedback for me, and hit that bell thing or whatever. And follow me on Twitter.